Hello everyone and welcome to another Word in Season. I hope that wherever you find yourself today, this is an encouragement for you. I want to look at a beautiful passage in John chapter 13 where Jesus washes the feet of his disciples. It's a pretty well-known passage, but I want to give you a little bit of context just to help you understand the significance of what's happening here. Remember, we're talking about first century Jerusalem, so paved roads weren't really a thing, not in the city itself. They were more like winding dirt trails, which would have been covered in a thick layer of dust. So you can imagine when it rained, those dirt roads just disintegrated into mud. Jesus wasn't walking around in a pair of boots, and neither was his disciples. He would have been wearing sandals. So it would have been impossible to keep your feet clean as you're walking along these dirt roads. They would have just been filthy. That's what it was. That's why it was customary for the host to provide a slave at the door who would wash the feet of his guests as they arrived. Nobody wants muddy feet trudging through their home. And the servant would kneel with a pitcher of water, a bowl, and a towel, and wash the dirt and mud of the feet of each of the guests as they arrived. It wasn't a particularly glorious job, that's why they made a slave do it. And if you couldn't afford a slave or you didn't have one of the guests who arrived early would take it upon themselves to fill that role and serve the other guests. That was the custom at that time. Now that's really important, because when we get to John chapter 13, it's fascinating to me that we don't see any of the disciples who are willing to fill that role. None of them want to wash the feet of the other guests. And Chuck Swindoll says the room was filled with proud hearts and dirty feet. They were willing to fight for the throne to see who was the greatest. We see that just a couple of chapters earlier. But they weren't willing to fight for the towel, for servanthood. And yet we get to verse 3 and it says, Jesus got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing and wrapped a towel around his waist. After that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him. And he came to Simon Peter, who said to him, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" And Jesus replied, "You do not now realize what I am doing, but later you will understand." "No," said Peter, "you shall never wash my feet." Jesus said, "Unless I wash you, you have no part with me." And when he had finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes and returned to his place. "Do you understand what I have done for you?" he asked them. "You call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that is what I am. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. Now I have set an example that you should do as I have done for you." Now, here is the King of Kings taking on the role of a servant, not begrudgingly or out of duty. No, this is who he is. Jesus said, "I have come not to be served, but to serve, and to give my life as a ransom for many." Well, that's our God. That's who he is, but that's also what he's inviting us into. It's a marker of his kingdom, a core characteristic of his people. And it's beautiful. It's truly a beautiful thing that a community marked by that heart, that willingness, that desire to place others before themselves and to serve, that type of community is a beautiful thing. It's life as God intended. And may that be us. May that be you. May we follow in Jesus' example. May we serve. May we humble ourselves, place others before ourselves, and serve.